Hello and welcome everyone to join us today. I hopefully all of you are doing well and thank you so much to join in on a weekend. I believe it's going to be really exciting. The discussion today that we'll have. I have so many beautiful ladies here as a panel, and the work that you're doing is really great. And we would all like to learn a lot more about you. I am Hani Kithani on behalf of 10,000 Startups India. Today we are meeting here for the inauguration of StartupsXchange Global Women Entrepreneurs Awards. StartupsXchange is a virtual platform that allows women entrepreneurs to get access to global mentors, advisors, and investors. Basically, services that allows starting from their fundraising and any other services, starting from their idea stage till they go for an IPO. So this is the platform that helps women entrepreneurs and here to empower. Before we begin the session, please allow me to give a brief introduction about our panel members today. Hello, Jean. So Jean is the founder and CEO of Vsource Network, basically 5,000 women entrepreneur community of 5,000 women and their business. Miss Malini here. Hi, we all know her. So
Good.
Shan here doing podcasts with a lot of renowned people out there and is founder of Spicy Sangria. Ashwiti is the founder of Avsar Shala, building a community of children and parents for the opportunity awareness out there on a global level. We have Ridhima from Namya Foods, health-based startup providing Ayurveda solutions. We also have Ankita, founder of Saha Fund and Stronger Capital, first VC fund providing opportunities for women entrepreneurs and investments. And Mithane, hi Mithane.
Hi everyone.
Is an advisor to startups and an angel investor. Hi, do we have Genevieve? I really feel that it's going to be a great conversation because we have a lot of entrepreneur minds on a single platform.
For me, the magical word has been flexibility because right from the start of the pandemic, we have been able to connect with so many people internationally, like be it interns from US and UK, be it incubation platforms like Bridge Pavilions, which is based out of Madrid, or a mentor from Malaysia. So for me, the core word has been flexibility because that allows me to build my network as well as manage my work productively. Here's a productivity hack that I have been using for the past 1.5 years. I usually break my day into two chunks. One is for the maker mode, which allows me to do like solid work in a solid chunk of time, and also go into the managerial mode for the next half of my day, like snippets of time available everywhere, get small tasks done, and be available to all the people who are working with me. So this helps me to juggle home and work effectively. But as an entrepreneur, I always believe that we have to embrace flexibility and keep realistic goals and always leave a little bit of time for uncertainties because every day is different in entrepreneurship at least.
Goal of last year has been learning on how to balance working from home. Because usually you just kind of get ready, get out, and you're at work, and then you come back. But now you're also at home, so you can hear everything, you can do everything. So for me now, it's kind of like I find these pockets of time, which is say sometimes in the morning or post lunch or even late night, where I can kind of work around kind of the family schedule as well. And of course, my work is to do with India, US, UK. So I think now in terms of flexibility, it's kind of better managed that way as well. And there's so many things that you want to be able to do, in terms of say like yoga or something else for yourself. So I think now it's been more kind of managed well as well. So I think I've been able to find balance working from home.
I think for me, it's been a whole lot of balance. I think I used to just have overworked days and I never knew the value of my own time, which I've kind of realized now since we've started working from home. I have a lot more time for myself, which I love. I save so much time in travel, and I love that I can say no to so many more things, right? Malini, do you experience this? Where I can just be like, hey, I want to hop onto a Zoom call, and it just becomes so much easier. But on the hindsight, like Ashwati said, that I can actually connect with so many more people. So I'm talking to people in different time zones, as well as just people who are 20 minutes down and able to possibly get to know them better. So I think it's been good.
I think for me, it's been kind of interesting because I'll be honest, I do struggle with being a bit of a workaholic. And I adopted a puppy during lockdown, so he forces me to take a break now and again. But I do feel that my work days actually have filled up and become longer because you don't take that break in the commute. I feel like I have a lot more screen time than I used to because, I would be out doing various different things at that time. So I'll be honest about that. But I do feel like I've learned about myself that I've always been a very social person, and my line of work requires me to go to a lot of events and parties and do all of that. I don't miss that at all. I thought that would make me a lot more stir crazy, that FOMO, but I actually only miss seeing a handful of people that, of course, I see on Zoom and my friends. I think the real joy for us has been, we launched the Girl Tribe app while the lockdown was on, and it's really been sort of a passion project, a piece of my heart to create a kinder internet for women. And the Ignore No More online campaign to sort of talk about internet harassment and bullying and cleaning up that sort of virtual space. So I've kind of acclimatized myself to living online more. It's a place that I was, born and brought up in the sense of my career. But I think the real challenge, which I'm excited to hear from everyone here, is really finding that online and offline balance more than work-life balance these days. But I'm very excited to be here, and these kind of calls are very nice because you connect, like Shan said, with so many people that you probably wouldn't get a chance to talk to. So thanks for having me.
It's been interesting for sure. The last year and a half. So I run a women's networking group. We have 22 chapters just in the US right now. And we were always face to face. We were always in real life. And when pandemic hit, it was everything pivot to online. So I agree with everybody that the commutes are nothing anymore. You just run and sit in front of the computer. But with 22 chapters, we have 22 meetings every month. So sitting in front of a screen, I feel you, Malini, am I saying that correctly? It got to be really trying to say, I can't do back-to-back calls. I've got to be able to get up and go for a walk. And I wish I had a puppy, but it has been a little bit different. It's 4:30 in the morning here, so I'm actually in Colorado. So that's a state in the United States. So thank you so much for having it. I agree. One of the greatest things about pandemic is being able to meet people from around the world, because this is really exciting for me to be here.
When the pandemic hit, we had just begun. It was our first year of business, and everybody who starts a startup understands that there are no bifurcations to your work and personal life. There is work happening all the time, and then there are other things that you have to manage. So I think, honestly speaking, I had no priorities. Like, work was the priority, also because I think we were very small. We were 6 of us managing everything from manufacturing to marketing to getting the product in place to getting raw material in place. So I think there was no work-life balance as such. And I think when I started off, we just had to face the pandemic right away. Right, so I think we are those babies who were born in the pandemic. So I don't think we really needed to manage anything because we were just grown. We've grown in that environment of working from home. I right now have about 26 employees, everybody working for the organization from the beginning from their homes. And so to say, I don't plan to even get an office for the next 2-3 years because I think it's just working wonderfully for us. So while we've been working day in, day out, there's a lot of work that's happening. I think from how we look at corporate, from how we look at work, I think we are, slowly shifting to a trend, to a corporate world, which is going to function extremely differently. And I think there are going to be new sectors which are going to come up. There will be a lot of changes that will happen in how the sectors are working today. So I think we are just working towards a different kind of shift.
I'm Geneviève, and I actually am the one who's bucked the system. I decided in December that I couldn't take it anymore. So I am lucky I have a US passport and I live in the UK. So I decided to get on a plane. I had gone for 2 trips in September and November because I lived in Jersey, which is an island. And I felt that I needed to see people. I needed to be in a place where I felt less constrained. I live on a farm, so imagine I was seeing the farm and the water, and that was it. So I'm like, okay, New York, here I come. So I went back to the States. And one of the things I have is a project in Haiti, and I hadn't been able to go during the pandemic. And we actually went live without me being on the ground. And that has had great results, but not being able to see and to talk to the users was important. So I went to Haiti for 3 months. I came back, and then I decided 10 days of quarantine, and now I'm calling you guys from the DRC. So I'm the rebel. It's interesting to see how actually people in places like Africa or the Caribbean are dealing with the pandemic. I am being careful. I've had my first shot. I look to have my second one. It's about washing your hand, putting the mask on. But I do think that the personal touch is something that we will have to go back to in order to be able to really get quickly as to what are the issues, what are the challenges, because we can do it in Zoom, but we don't get to see those little ticks that somebody has a body uncomfortableness about it. And many times we turn off the camera, or as happened, the communication is not clear and you're trying to get through. So I think we're going to have to bridge the two. As was said by Malini, being able to also to talk to people from all over the world has been one of the blessing of it, which is for me has made my work be recognized in the US. Even though I'm US, for a long time I wasn't speaking to the US, I was just talking to the East and to Europe. So now I have made great connection. Obviously that means odd times to get in touch with them, but like this, actually my team is in India, in Dubai, in the US, so you can imagine the times I keep.
Hi, everyone. So I will share my experience both as an investor and also as an entrepreneur. And I would say 3 things I've learned. It's been a humbling experience for all of us. But I think one is adaptation, why it is important for entrepreneurs to adapt very quickly. Think of the whole COVID experience as a litmus test for entrepreneurs on how quickly they are able to adapt, right? Because the amount of digitization that has happened, as they say, has happened as kind of multiplied or has scaled almost 2x or 3x compared to last 10 years, as one of the findings by Microsoft shares. Second, I think very important is how fragile the world we live in is. So it kind of tells you in many humbling ways, right? What is important, what is urgent. A lot of us, I remember my early days as an entrepreneur, very little regard for family time, personal time. It was all about going out achieving success. And I think now we realize that success without family and without health is going to be very short-lived. So I think in some ways, my daughter has a startup, and I see that the way she's shaping her startup is very different than 22 years back when I did my first startup. And it was all about sacrificing family time, as I said, versus I see her that she's able to lead a lot more balance, though she's in a very similar phase of early stage of building a startup. So I think second is fragility and humility. I think that is important. And third, I would argue in some way that, no matter how much digitization happen, we are all about human touch, human connect, I think, as somebody pointed out. And I miss those, tinkling of glasses and doing a glass of wine or a coffee. I think I've closed, and maybe I'm, probably one of the older guy years, so I might date myself here, but I think I've closed more deals over a coffee or over a glass of wine or over a round of golf or just, going out and showing up at the customer side or even investor than I've probably done on Zoom. So, call me old fashioned, call me something little skeptical, but I'm yet to close. Even in terms of investment, I still prefer, even with my mask on, to go out and meet those entrepreneurs before I invest in them. It's so much about, human touch and human. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, because I see my daughter and I see how much they are struggling. Is she able to do more meetings and calls than me? Yes. But I would argue whether those more meetings, more calls, more connections with US, UK, rest of the world, is that all really kind of leading to more transactions or more quality of relationship and quality of transaction? I think the jury is yet to be out on that. And obviously the world will have to adapt and it will happen. I just feel like at least, during my lifetime, I hope that we go back to at least some of the time, days where we are able to kind of go out and meet people in person, do interaction in person, do transaction in person. So I think that would be my third learning, if I may say, during this whole pandemic and lockdown.
That's really insightful, Miten. Just out of curiosity, have you learned anything in your kitchen?
I'm married for 27 years, so I relearned being patient. And with 2 kids, grown-up kids, you keep learning patience and the virtues of patience every day. So, but besides that, obviously, you do pick up a lot of things. I think youngsters these days, you get to learn a lot from them too, right? When you meet a lot of these entrepreneurs and you see how quickly they are able to go out and adapt and scale, there's a lot to learn from that as well. Besides some personal culinary skills, which I'll be happy to demonstrate once we all can meet in person.
Definitely. I'll take that as a test. So, Miten, you being from a technology background, technology being your strong suit, do tell us in your experience how women are doing in leadership roles in technology.
Very interesting. One of my close, very, very close family friend, CEO of BNP Paribas here in Asia. His wife recently became the youngest managing director at JP Morgan. And I wanted my daughter to, when we were congratulating her, I wanted to ask her, and I did ask before, along with my daughter, in terms of what are the 3 things that she would attribute her one of the very fastest rise of becoming managing director in this part of the world, not in US. I mean, she's probably in his early 40s. And she said, frankly, and she has worked with JP Morgan for, more than 14, 15 years. And if anybody's from JP Morgan, please don't take this in any other way. But she was saying across the board, though a lot has been done, a lot needs to be done to break the glass ceiling. She says she isn't sure that, in fact, she was surprised when she was told by her HR that she's one of the first youngest to break into managing director role in her early 40s. And she was thinking that, whether she should feel happy about it or actually feel sad about it. And that summarizes that there's a lot more that needs to be done, purely because I think the bias in the tech industry in particularly, since you asked me specifically, I have seen it over the last 30 years, out of which 25 years in Silicon Valley alone, has been so much that when I was in US from 90s onwards, I used to think that 95% of the companies that were funded were male. In fact, as recently as 2 years back, I remember there was a huge movement about going out and investing in women, right? So I would think that we have a long way to go. There is almost 50, 60 years of bias that needs, and I don't think that's going to go away in 5, 6 years. We should celebrate. I'm not denying that more women entrepreneurs coming on board, but I think forums like this, I was hoping could happen practically, in every corner of the world, right? And at least in large countries like India and others, where it is proven, in Africa as well. I think I heard somebody from working in Africa that women actually are them, out of, and again, I have no shame in accepting this, who actually lift the family out of poverty, right? Because of their emphasis on education and healthcare compared to men. And we all know that, right? Who keeps, starting at home, who keeps the home clean. So I think given that, I would definitely like to say that based on my experience between Valley and here in India, there's a lot more that needs to happen in India. I'm so glad that, I'm the sole male representation on this forum, but I would love to kind of go out and happy to see so many women entrepreneurs, right, over here. And I really hope that there are support communities like Ms. Malini and others, which are solely focused on uplifting and giving more support to women entrepreneurs.
It's so important for us, to be able to have access to opportunities, right? So when I started Saha Fund like around 5 years ago, as I think Miten mentioned, there's a huge kind of bias going on, historically for years. So it's going to take some time, but, there weren't enough women entrepreneurs, right? And there weren't enough women investors because, I truly believe that unless you experience something or use something or need something, how will you know the need to fund it, right? So, I'm part of all these kind of, angel networks and accelerator programs, and I used to attend these kind of monthly meetings, right, where 4 or 5 entrepreneurs come and present, and so it's a room full of 15 men, and you're coming and you're kind of presenting something to do with PCOS or postnatal products and solutions, or even kind of lingerie, right? And you're presenting to a room full of 15 men how they're not going to understand it enough, and they need for it to fund it, right? So I saw this real need for there to be more women entrepreneurs and investors out there. And that's why I set up Saha Fund. But what I also have realized in this journey and it's important, is that, as you rightly asked, that it's something that has to change from the school level, right? So you have all these kind of, girls who code, STEM programs, university, etc., right? Because, even say in India or across, you'll see so many of women kind of coming in at the fresher level, but then they slowly kind of start to drop off mid management, and then you'll see very less women in kind of leadership roles, right? I think so that's kind of what needs to change. So it's something which has to kind of change over time. I mean, I did my engineering, and I think at that time, in a class of 70, 80, there were just 4 women, right? And I think now that's kind of changed. It's more balanced. You see more kind of a 40-60 or 50-50 split. But I think it's something that has to change from the school academic level, and of course the career level, right, as well. So there needs to be more programs kind of educating about opportunities for women in tech. Even at the workplace, I always say that it's, of course, as employees, it's your kind of, you should take the initiative of figuring out how you can upskill yourself, but even employers need to have a lot of kind of workshops, orientation programs, upskilling programs, right? I think the whole of last year, now we've been kind of, pushed into this new future of work, where now you can upskill yourself. So you should, right? But I think there's a lot of opportunities out there now, and women need to be able to take it. And I think it's very important that, like Saha Fund, but there should be many more funds. There should be much more institutional capital available. There should be more kind of support from corporates. You see a lot of that now, to be honest, at least in the US and UK, a lot in the US. And I think there's a huge kind of push towards it, especially last year, when a lot of people saw how disproportionately women got affected, right? Small and medium businesses and women-led businesses. But I would love to see that more, especially in India, because I know it's still not necessarily a huge corporate focus, right? So of course there's a few schemes, but there needs to be more to happen around that. Yeah.
My biggest value add is networking and finding those people who are going to support each other. I think that one of it's such an obvious thing. Women should be supporting women. Women should be have each other's backs. And when I talk about supporting each other, it doesn't mean I'm going to buy your products, or or you need to buy my products, or what I'm doing. We can support each other by just making ourselves visible on social media and sharing each other's posts, and giving each other ideas and sharing resources of things that you found out, that we're right now collaborating, and we're talking about the things that worked for us during pandemic. We need to do more of that, and it's not at all to exclude men. I mean, we love men. It is really about women not tearing each other down, not competing with each other, but really truly collaborating with each other and having each other's backs. And I think that'll trickle down to all of our young girls. We teach them all to be kind to one another, to support one another. And I just think it's the beginning of a new era for women. I really do.
Yeah, and I think Jane really hit the nail on the head. I think in today's day and age, it's really about collaboration over competition. There was a time where everyone was told you really have to just talk about yourself and your own business, and on one level even put other people down to tell them you're better in some way. But I think the world has changed that way, and I think that's something that we've actually learned from social media creators. They're all about collaboration. If you look at their influencer videos, they'll constantly be collaborating with people in their peer group, people who you would consider to be their competition, and everybody wins because they bring both their audiences together and grow collectively. And I think that's really, really valuable and important. And I think what happens is, historically and unfortunately due to the patriarchy, we've been led to believe this narrative that women don't get along, that they're suspicious of each other, that you can't trust them. And they, every Saas Bahu show which shows daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws not getting along propagates all these ridiculous notions. But I have found, and I've definitely seen it in the Girl Tribe, women are incredibly empathetic and patient and have a great deal of, foresight on how to manage large amounts of people, and especially in companies where you have so many women together, and I think empathy goes a long way now, especially with something like the pandemic. Something as simple as, like, for instance, we just, started period leave at the company, just a day off when you have your period. It's something as simple as that. It's just these little moves that you can make, and I don't know if this is something that would come from male management. Unfortunately, they're just things that come from experience, right? I think that what's really important is, sometimes you may feel that, okay, how do I collaborate with someone else and what am I getting out of it? 99% of the times when I've collaborated with someone, the first question I've asked them is, how can I help you? And without thinking about what it does for me, I have firsthand seen Shan do this whenever we've worked together. She's always been, how can I help Girl Tribe? How can I help Miss Falani? And it is very clear that her agenda is not at all selfish or personal, but eventually we always find ways to collaborate together and both of us succeed. And I think that's just the key. If we all just started off saying, how can I help this other person with no agenda, we would find that the world would be a different place. And I think there's no one better than women in senior business positions to take this forward.
Yeah, I would like to add on here because I'm working with students, girls especially. So I have a lot of experience working with minds which are bubbling with ideas. And for me, while I saw a gap where students are not finding opportunities to grow in their areas of interest and talent. And one interesting insight which I saw was that the girls in STEM education, like STEM related higher education in India, is trending at 43%. Which is like the highest when we look at global standards. It's above 35%, which is the global standard, which also brings our attention to something else. Women or girls who are there in STEM related education, only 14% pursue jobs like in engineering, design, or art, pure science, etc. And even lesser, 3% go for research or PhDs. So we've been wondering, why does this funnel happen in India? And probably it's lack of confidence or maybe lack of awareness about available opportunities for them. And there are many platforms that are trying to bridge this right now. And I think women or girls are very blessed to be here in this time right now when us women are more aware that we have come through that. We don't want other girls and women to go through that same curve and reach these roles very later, like we are helping them to come and embrace such roles faster. And for me, what I understand is women and girls especially are blessed with that intuitiveness or the powerful gut instinct. So, if we convince them that they themselves have the superpower to forge their paths and make their own opportunities, maybe more girls will be able to, embrace entrepreneurial pursuits.
It is definitely a stereotype. Women are not villains, so we can see that today we all women are at one platform, speaking and sharing ideas about how women should be empowered or should be encouraged to go for entrepreneurship and be independent.
So I think I'll probably start first. And, so I started my business when I turned 27. And I think that's quite late if you have to really hone the skills that you need when you scale up the business. So I think from my perspective, I think girls should be encouraged to start at a much early age. I think there are these basic fundamental issues that we have in our education system. So most of us start thinking about what we really need to do after our engineering is done, right? If you look at a typical 90s kid, they would probably think about, starting something or doing something only after their engineering. So I think there is a fundamental change that we need in our education system, So while entrepreneurship might look very cool, I think that there's only few people that have those skills to take that up. So while it's not something that compulsory for everybody, but I feel that whoever gets into it should be encouraged to get into it at an earlier age, because I think there are a lot of learners that you might experience. There are so many experiences you might have where I think if you're young, your risk ability is much higher. So I think my two bits would be to encourage girls to take probably when they're doing engineering, probably when they are doing their bachelors. So way early is my two bits.
One of the things I would say is that I actually do think a couple of years in the corporate world is a great thing, because it teaches, so I came from a corporate world, and I've come up with the idea that really I was always the entrepreneur in the organization. So I was the one seeing things in the corner and getting others to be convinced about it. What happens is that as startup, we have to deal with corporate. They're not going away. So in ways, that apprenticeship is great to know the communication style that you need to have. So how do you communicate? So I agree in people having their side gig, but it is invaluable that time, because you then know how to really get your idea on the table, being able to close and not alienate, because that is sometimes what happens. We think we're so great as a startup that our idea is the first thing that came out of apple pie, but then we lose, because what we have in startup, which you don't have in corporate, is the agility to make things happen. And to your question about how do you bring more women in there, it's really a lot. We need, those of us who have crossed, need to be mentors. We need to make ourselves available to them, and really in a pro bono way. Some people will get in touch with me and I will say, okay, I'll give you time and I'll introduce you to my network, because guess what? The whole idea of how people raise is through network. So if we don't open our network and we don't do as the men do, which is that networking, then we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to actually be able to get those dollars, which we need to be able to sustain, because a startup with no money is dead.
So I think for me, I think it's a mixture of what the lovely ladies have said. I think it is that, one, I started very young. I started working when I was 15, but I have my mom who's like a model figure for me, in the sense of she's been working ever since, while she delivered me, while I went to school, till today. So I think seeing that, I knew that there was no other way, right? And the best thing which I think was, I was always encouraged to try what I wanted to. So I was never told that would not work. I was always told to research and give it a shot. And of course, some things I realized were loss making, and some things I realized really didn't even make it to the break-even point. Then I think that those were my learnings and those were my lessons. I kind of just did about 5 internships and got my feet into the ground, working aside my mom, and then I run 2 companies actually. One is Spicy Sangria, which is basically trade shows and bringing lifestyle brands and fashion brands across India, Singapore, and Dubai, and Networking Now India, which is a networking platform within India, where we connect different people. And I think merging the 2 of them, and I say this because I realized, like Malini said, and I think Jean said as well, networking really gets you, through a lot of doors. But I think the right thing is, do not network. This is the biggest learning I've had, with a want, right? So don't always, that's one thing that's got me till here, is not entering a room thinking, this is what I'm going to achieve, this is what I'm going to, take from this, and this is what I'm going to ask for. So yeah, I did start very young, and maybe I did have that heads up in terms of failing early, a lot of lessons earlier on. But I think it's don't ever doubt yourself, is what I would say, from what I've learned from my journey, because now it's my 15th year in business, and I finally feel like I'm somewhere where I want to be. So starting young is like, I think somebody did say, I can't see her on the chat, and Ridhima said that starting young, it has its advantages, but like Genevieve said, that you should work somewhere, get some structure, mold yourself, know what, otherwise people who are entrepreneurs always think, am I missing out on that monthly salary? Am I missing out on that stability? Am I missing out on the work culture, the team culture. So I think it's best to have best of both worlds and make the choice for yourself.
Yeah, so I think I've had a little bit of an interesting evolution, right? I started blogging back in 2008 when, I think Facebook had just about launched. So it was like very nascent. And at that point, people didn't even know what a blogger was. So people always ask me this question, how did you come up with this business? And how did you become, like a media person in that sense and start your own company? I had no intention or idea that this would happen simply because this career didn't exist. And I think it's exciting if you look at the new generation today, there are careers that they're going to be pursuing that do not yet have existence either. Just, with the pandemic, I feel it's even more speed tracked now, the kind of things that people are going to do. Like even professional hosters for Zoom meetings, for example, you have like new roles that are coming up every day. So I think for me, it was initially in 2008, because my father was a diplomat, I'd grown up all over the world. I came back to India thinking, wow, there's so much enterprise and so much hustle. And nobody talks about this version of India when you travel the world. I remember being 9 years old in Greece and somebody asked me if I go to school on an elephant. And I thought that would be amazing. I would love to rock up to my school on an elephant, but that's not true. But it's nobody's fault that this is the visual they have when they watch National Geographic and Slumdog Millionaire. That's what you think India is. And even for us as icons, we have Bollywood actors, and then I guess, our cartoon characters are Chota Bheem. We don't have our Oprahs and Ellens and, even the Ryan Seacrest. So whatever, your young millennial mentors are. And that's kind of where I started with that thought. I also love entertainment and fashion and beauty. And two things happened. I couldn't find all of that in one place. Just like internationally, you'd have all these nice magazines that would be like pop culture-y. And here it felt like a little bit of a media dump of just celebrity pictures in front of a backdrop. And I was like, but I want to know what happened inside the party. I want to know what they're really like. I want to know, what they do when they're off duty or things that they cry about. So I started to sort of document that. And over 15 years, I'm proud to say that I've built relationships with them where they know that I wasn't just looking for clickbaity headlines or to twist something they were going to say. And it takes a long time. It's a relationship you build. And it's not their fault because traditionally celebrities are used for clickbait. You'll change anything they said, whatever, I remember distinctly I was interviewing Anaita Shroff about being a stylist, and she was telling me about working with Kim Kardashian. And she said, it was really amazing that Kim was on time for the shoot. And the headline that somebody covered from my interview with her was, Anaita is very strict with Kim on set. And I was like, I don't know where you made this leap, she said something entirely different. But so I think for me, it was that I feel like Bollywood is in all of our bloods, and we really should celebrate, the people behind it more. It's very easy to put people on a pedestal and tear them down. But, I think that we all have to remember at the end of the day, they're also human, and nobody really showed that side of them. So I wanted to create a positive, happy, shiny space for entertainment. People often ask me, what's the filter? How do you react to trolls? What do you do? I said, I made a really simple rule early on. And I think this applies for anyone, whether you're a content creator or a consumer. Only write what you can say to somebody's face. And you will see automatically how different your responses, even to somebody's comment, will be, how your punctuation will be framed, all of that, because you would never be that way in person. So I think that was kind of the rule. And I always like to say in the last couple of years, Little Miss Malini has grown up and is now trying to do something that leaves a legacy, which is really where the Girl Tribe app has, germinated from, to build a homegrown home brand that's supported to live their best lives. I feel that I was super lucky, and I'm sure this is true for all the women here. We have come across the best mentors in our lives, someone who said something life-changing, someone who gave us a leg up, even women who just, were there as sounding boards. And I think that I want to create a community for women that they can reach out for everything. It bothers me when people say women's issues as, rape and menstruation. There's so much more in our lives, like work and relationships and travel and food, literally everything. Nobody calls them men's issues, So I really wanted to change that narrative and say it's about everything that I care about. And it's not that women always need saving. I think that, people just need to get out of our way sometimes. And just like Jane said, we love men. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. It's not men against women. It's men and women against shitty people on some degree. But yeah, so that was kind of the goal. And for me now, I feel so, I feel like, it's just a silly, cheesy line I heard in a movie once that said the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. That's from Moulin Rouge. And I think the one thing women struggle with is receiving love. We're very good at giving it. And I think that, sometimes we've got it wrong. We're on this earth for 60, 80, 90 years at best, and we don't take anything with us. And you realize this during the pandemic. So what is your purpose? To bump into people, to have amazing conversations, to spark joy, to have memorable moments. And I think that's kind of where I'm going with my life now. And I feel pretty happy about it.
Two things. Maybe one place where I disagree though is that women don't need to be like men. That's one lesson I learned actually during this COVID time as well. We really don't need to compete. I mean, we have our own weaknesses, right? You talk about your PhD time. We have our own time as well. It's just that it's not known, right? But and we all been, I'm sure, whether we confess or not, but we all realize this while we are living last year and a half from home, right? That we are not, we do have our own, what I call, little off time as well. Same like, my wife would have and my daughter would have. That's one. Second, I think, the perspective that women bring doesn't need to be exactly like, oh, I need to network as hard as men. I don't think so. If you're able to do, that's great. Hallelujah, right? All glory to you. But really, I think the subtleness, the empathy, the compassion, the inclusiveness, the diversity, the difference of opinion that you bring, to me, there's a lot more value, both subtle and also amplified, in my opinion. And I've seen that happening even at a corporate level, where we have learned, believe, and I can tell you in today, and I hope some of my colleagues can vouch for it, we had very little patience, or we had very little value perception, back in 90s about when a woman would go out and share an opinion. We always used to think, and now I think suddenly everybody has realized that, look, in many cases and in most cases, they have been able to go out and add tremendous value, maybe even at the cost of, at the cost of, let's say, a project or a decision being delayed, or a project at the cost of not going out and falling in line, if I may quote unquote, just because there were more men in the room. A lot of this was not taught to us when I was growing up. I wasn't told, so you have to understand, you have to give men also some time to evolve. I'm hoping my son, who's going into high school, he turns out to be a much better listener and much better appreciate, or at least, not just talk about it, but at least in practice also able to go out and see the value that women bring to the table. I was frankly not taught like that. So I think, cut us some slack, give us also some time to evolve. It's an evolution process. But I agree with everything, by and large, what has been said. I just think that, we shouldn't just only value women against men on terms like networking and other. There's just tremendous amount of other value add. There's a lot I'm learning from my daughter, who's a first-time entrepreneur, and frankly she's struggling her startups, but I'm learning the way she's going out and building, and I am amazed at the amount of patience and different ways that she's able to go out and do that very differently than I remember 5 years back. I would be very different. I would lose my cool and say, this is the only way it has to be done. I'm telling you, why don't you run with it? But the fact that we let them go out and evolve on their own, so I'm hoping next generation of men will be a lot better and a lot different than I was. Part of it, and you got me here because I was thinking about the same thing during the lockdown, as we all went through this phase, and I was saying, why didn't my wife go back, right, and join in? It was about prioritizing family. I mean, there are like hundreds of reasons, and they are all valid. I'm not trying to take them away from them, and there are. But I think to a great degree, in my opinion, or at least 49% of that fault lies with the men in the house. I would take the blame for sure, because somewhere we feel like from when it comes to prioritizing women career equally, if not more, right, to men. I'm not doubting the intent here, and I'm not generalizing men here, but I somewhere felt, at least in my case, that I fell short because I saw some of the other friends, and I'm making this, confession, keeping in mind that my wife might be on the same channel and she might use this against me. But I think privately I've shared this with her, and I would like to make that confession. I would definitely feel that 49% of that fault, if not 50, falls with the men, because we just don't. We have the intent. But somewhere culturally, historically, however psychologically you want to say, and this is not just Indian men. I think in general, even in US, I've seen that because we just don't go out and take that extra step of going out and supporting and saying, every other challenge will be taken care of and I'm there equally. Somewhere we have this, where if a woman goes out and steps up, as somebody wanted out and said, look, we don't need to be every time going out and making a sacrifice in the earlier part of the conversation. I think every time a woman does that, to be honest with you, at least I can tell you, and I'm probably representing, some of the men, if not most of them, we try to take advantage of that. I mean, unknowingly. I'm not saying knowingly, but I'm saying we'll go out and say, yeah, let's go out and, make sure that while, you are managing family, I'll go out and earn the bread, for instance. I'm just to put it very mildly. But that would be my...
I'll give Sean the floor after. For me, I agree very much with what Minton says, that the support of your partner is really what helps. But also to address what I think is needed by the companies is support and understanding and flexibility. So if you tell a woman that she needs to come back to work and what you're offering her is the same thing, which is every day you come to the office, she then has all, unfortunately, she has all these duties to her family. And usually that's sabbaticals because she's having a child. So unless she's earning well enough to really have the care which is necessary for her child at home, it's very difficult. And if she has that flexibility to say, you know what, today my child is sick, I will work from home. What I hope the pandemic has showed us is that people can work from everywhere. And we need to trust that a face-to-face does not mean that somebody is not performing. And performance is based on the deliverables, not presence. So as an HR person, I think it's very important to look at that. And as Miten said, having that support from your partner, and that's something I have from my husband. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if he didn't say, honey, you're going to do fine, is very important to us. So it's that conversation that needs to happen.
I just wanted to add something here. I think maybe I'm probably a little bit different in the sense of the sabbatical phase. I think to a large degree, when people talk about sabbaticals, it also has to do with people, I guess, taking time off to have kids, or I think primarily that is what the case happens to be with women. I don't have children. I have a pet. So it's not quite the same thing. I think that one of the things that I think is important to note here, and I think it's important that people also allow for that to be a new normal. I think that it's an interesting double standard that women face sometimes. I can't tell you how many times people have asked me, don't you want to have children? Or when are you having children? Or how many children do you have? And I'm like, well, I have 65 in my office, technically, if you ask me, So I think it's interesting that it kind of puts so much pressure on women. And, one of the things we're looking at in Grow Tribe as well is what are the things that are really holding women back from going back to the workforce? There are very few provisions in offices for women to breastfeed, for example. If that was normalized, and I've seen this with so many of my friends, if they could breastfeed, they would be much more comfortable going back to work. In fact, so many more women during the pandemic from work from home are coming back to work faster because they can stop, break, feed. They can be on a Zoom call with a baby on a breast and still be getting a lot of work done. So I think that there has to be some adjustment with everyone from the HR departments to the industries as a whole. I joke with someone saying that if men were the ones who went off and got pregnant and had babies, businesses would be structured very differently today. It's just that here the expectation is both that, women should go and have children and raise the family, but also, she's not really going to come back to work because eventually she's going to have kids. So what do women do with that? And I think I'm from the complete other spectrum of this. I don't have a sabbatical issue. But I feel that the assumption, even when I started working, even though I wasn't planning to have kids, was always the assumption, but aren't you going to have kids? Maybe one day you'll want to, and I always ask, guys this question. When somebody asks me this question, I'm like, would you have asked a guy the same question? And what would their answer be? And I think that's a really important lens for us to look at. And I think it's extremely important. And I think, Linisha, I'm glad that you asked the question on that front. But I'd love to know, from a guy's perspective, if you had gone off and had to have kids, what would your answer to this question be? Or if you had to take that sabbatical, what would you say you would do? And I'll give you an example. I remember I was doing a Bollywood interview for the cast of Mission Mangal, and there was Akshay Kumar and 5 actresses. And every journalist who went before me asked them about work-life balance. How do you manage with your kids? How do you manage that? So I said, I'm not going to ask the girls. I'm going to ask him. Tell me about your work-life balance. And he said, I don't understand the question. I said, exactly. It doesn't mean anything. And he said, well, at 2 p.m. I stop work and I go home and hang out with my kids. But if a woman had said the same thing, there would be so much judgment about that, about how seriously she takes her career. And it's very often, I have, my best friend has 4 children, and it's really not about that, priorities change so much or you're just too tired to work. It's not really that at all. It's that the infrastructure is not in place. We don't have, people may not be able to afford 4 nannies that sit at home. It's not like you can, and very often if you could just bring your child to work or you could do those things, it's really as simple as that. And I think that's the infrastructure that's required. And it shouldn't be something that's so rare in an office. I really want to see, breastfeeding rooms or normalizing being able to do it at your desk sometime in the future.
Yeah, I want to just piggyback on that because I have young daughters that are balancing, and it's very strange to me. So it goes back to the idea that you brought up before of a lot of the times women aren't willing to receive. So I see her husband taking the baby up to bed, and she's sitting downstairs enjoying a cup of tea, and I'm like, it's so strange to me, but it's like this is what has to happen in order for the world to really evolve and for men and women to live well together and see each other's value, not just in, oh, you're the baby maker and you're the money maker.
Yeah. One question that really needs a lot of corporates, a lot of even smaller companies, agencies, the first question that's always asked is, are you married and how long have you been married, right? So it's like, because if you've been married a year or two, she'll start planning a baby, she'll leave us in a year. Why is that even a question? It really irritates me, but I have to say the one change I've seen now that a lot of my friends have started having kids now is they continue working almost immediately. So companies are being a lot more supportive than they were. Especially companies run by women, obviously, with no bias meant here. I think Miten is also right. And it's tough to admit, but he's right. If you do have spousal support, like Jean said, if your husband is going to take up some of the work, you will go out and work a lot more. Plus, I feel like today it's become a lot easier to work from home. And I think that maybe there should have been a lot more trust earlier, right? That there was always that question mark, right? There was always, will she come back? Will she join somewhere else, which is easier? Will she just be with her baby for 3 years and then start something on her own? Why is there that question mark? That needs to change. So leave the ball in our court is what I'm saying.
I want to say thank you everyone for having me, and I really look forward to, I'm going to connect with all the wonderful ladies on this panel individually, separately, to see what we can do together. I would love to, collaborate, and thank you so much, honey. You're a wonderful host, and it was really nice to chat with everyone. Thanks, Miten, for all your insight as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, all the panel members here, Ashwati, Genevieve, Tan, Miten, Ridhima, and Ankita. I really appreciate your time, in fact, on a Sunday. And I really hope if we can take a part 2 of this panel discussion, which will take to another level.